The sun was beginning to set, casting an orange glow across the forgotten part of town. Nestled between towering, crumbling structures and a maze of narrow alleyways stood an abandoned building, long forsaken by its original tenants. The chipped walls revealed layers of once vibrant paint, now faded and peeling. The floors were a tapestry of dust, broken glass, and discarded debris. This neglected corner of the city was rarely visited, save for the occasional stray cat or the wind that whispered through the shattered windows. Among the remnants of what was once a lively neighborhood, a small boy no more than 6 years old wandered, laughing as he ran through the dimly lit hallways. He had been playing hide-and-seek with his friends, and this derelict building, untouched by time or care, was the perfect playground. His tiny feet scurried across the dusty floor as he sought the best hiding spot, his giggles echoing softly against the worn walls. But as he ventured deeper into the building, a strange feeling tugged at his chest, a curiosity pulling him toward a part of the structure he hadn't yet explored. The laughter of his friends faded into the distance, and the world outside the building seemed to vanish. All that remained was silence, punctuated by the faint hum of distant traffic. And then he heard it, a soft, pitiful cry that seemed to come from deep within the building. The sound echoed, fragile and haunting. It wasn't the scurry of rats or the call of stray animals that often roamed such desolate spaces. It was something else entirely, something in need of help. The boy's heart raced as he tiptoed cautiously toward the sound, his small hand brushing against the cold, rough walls. Each step seemed to amplify the cry, pulling him closer to the source. He rounded a corner, and his eyes widened in shock. There, lying on the cold floor wrapped in a frayed pink blanket, was a tiny baby. The infant's face was red, streaked with tears, and its small limbs flailed weakly in distress. For a moment, the boy stood frozen. He had never encountered anything like this before. How had the baby ended up here, alone in such a forsaken place? Why hadn't anyone come to help? His young mind raced, grappling with the weight of the situation. But he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't leave the baby behind. With trembling hands, he gently picked up the infant, cradling it against his chest. The baby's cries softened as the boy whispered soothing words, his voice filled with an instinctive tenderness. Despite his age, the boy understood the urgency of the moment. He had to get the baby to safety. Navigating the dim corridors with the baby in his arms, the boy felt a newfound determination. He moved quickly, scanning the streets as he exited the building. Not far from the entrance, a small corner shop stood, its elderly shopkeeper sorting boxes outside. Her kind face lit up with concern as the boy approached, breathless and desperate. "Please, help," he pleaded. "I found a baby. It's all alone." The shopkeeper's face softened, and she immediately ushered the boy inside. She helped him place the baby on the counter, covering the infant with a soft towel. Then, with urgency in her voice, she called the authorities. When the police arrived, they quickly took the baby into their care. The boy stood quietly nearby, his eyes never leaving the infant. Despite his exhaustion, he felt a sense of pride knowing he had done all he could. As the story of the boy's heroic act spread, it soon reached the ears of a wealthy couple, Jonathan and Elizabeth Whitmore. Weeks earlier, their infant son had been abducted from their home, and their desperate search had yielded no leads, until now. The baby found by the boy was their missing child. The Whitmores were overwhelmed with gratitude. They arranged to meet the boy at the hospital where their son was being cared for. When they finally stood before him, their emotions spilled over. Jonathan knelt down, his voice trembling. "You saved our son," he said. "You gave us back our world." Elizabeth, her eyes filled with tears, added, "We can never thank you enough. You are a hero." The boy, shy and unsure of how to respond, simply nodded. He hadn't acted for recognition or reward. In his heart, he had only wanted to help. But the Whitmores were determined to show their gratitude. They offered the boy's family a generous financial reward, enough to transform their lives. However, What they gave extended beyond money. They formed a bond with the boy, becoming a second family to him, and ensuring he would never want for anything again. The boy's simple act of kindness had set off a chain of events that not only reunited a family, but also changed his life forever. His courage and compassion reminded everyone that even the smallest among us can make a monumental difference. It was a testament to the power of selflessness, proving that in the darkest corners of the world, a single spark of light can illuminate the way. The bond that changed lives. The hospital room was filled with the quiet hum of monitors, the faint aroma of antiseptic, and the muffled voices of medical staff outside the door. The Whitmores stood beside the hospital bed, watching their baby boy sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. His tiny chest rose and fell with each breath, the distress of his ordeal finally giving way to calm. Elizabeth clung to Jonathan's arm, her tears flowing freely. But for the first time, they were tears of joy. The boy sat nearby, his small hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. He still couldn't grasp the magnitude of what had happened. To him, he had simply done what was right. The idea that he had saved someone so important, so loved, felt almost surreal. He glanced at the Whitmores, their faces a mix of relief, gratitude, and something else, something he couldn't quite place but would later understand as love. Jonathan crouched to the boy's eye level. His usual air of businesslike composure had melted into something softer, more human. "You're a brave young man," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't just save my son. You saved our family." Elizabeth knelt beside him, her hand gently resting on the boy's shoulder. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice warm and inviting. "Liam," he replied quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Liam," Jonathan said, "you're a hero. And heroes deserve to be cared for too." The Whitmores were not content with a simple thank you. They'd wanted to do more, much more. After consulting with Liam's family, they decided to bring him and his parents to their sprawling estate on the outskirts of town. What had begun as an invitation for a meal turned into a weekend stay, and soon, something more profound. The Whitmores' home was a marvel. A grand estate with sprawling gardens, marble floors, and high ceilings that seemed to stretch endlessly. Liam had never seen anything like it. To him, the house felt like something out of a fairy tale. But what struck him most wasn't the grandeur of the home. It was the kindness of its inhabitants. Jonathan and Elizabeth went out of their way to make Liam feel special. They introduced him to their friends as their young hero, praising his bravery. But they also made an effort to get to know him beyond his act of courage. They learned about his favorite games, his dreams of becoming a firefighter, and even his favorite food, peanut butter sandwiches, which Elizabeth made for him herself. It wasn't long before Liam and the Whitmores' baby, now affectionately called Little Jack, became inseparable. Liam, despite his young age, had a natural instinct for caregiving. He would sit by Jack's crib, making silly faces to make him giggle or rocking him gently when he fussed. The bond they formed was unshakable, as though fate had entwined their lives inextricably. As the days turned into weeks, Jonathan began noticing something remarkable in Liam. The boy had a quiet strength, a deep sense of empathy that belied his age. "He's going to grow into someone extraordinary," Jonathan remarked to Elizabeth one evening. "I want to make sure he has every opportunity to reach his potential." And so, the Whitmores made a life-altering decision. They approached Liam's parents with an offer to sponsor Liam's education and ensure he had access to opportunities that had once seemed out of reach. They promised it wasn't charity, it was gratitude. Liam's parents, though initially hesitant, saw the sincerity in the Whitmores' eyes. They agreed, understanding that this was a chance to secure a better future for their son. And so, Liam's life began to change. The Whitmores enrolled Liam in one of the city's best schools where he thrived. He made new friends, discovered a love for science, and joined the school's soccer team. But no matter how much his life changed, he never lost sight of who he was. He continued to visit his old neighborhood, playing with his friends in the dusty alleys, and he always returned to the abandoned building where he had first found little Jack. It became a place of reflection for him, a reminder of the moment that had set his life on a new path. Years passed, and Liam grew into a confident and compassionate young man. He excelled in school, earning a scholarship to a prestigious university. By then, the Whitmores had become more than benefactors. They were family. Jonathan and Elizabeth were there for every milestone, cheering him on at soccer games, celebrating his academic achievements, and guiding him through the challenges of growing up. Little Jack, too, had grown. The once fragile baby Liam had rescued was now a spirited boy with an infectious laugh and an unshakable admiration for his big brother. He followed Liam everywhere, mimicking his every move. To Jack, Liam wasn't just a hero, he was his best friend. On the day Liam graduated from university, the Whitmores hosted a grand celebration at their estate. Guests mingled in the garden, the air filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Liam stood at the center of it all, looking sharp in his graduation gown, his face glowing with pride. As the evening unfolded, Jonathan raised a glass to make a toast. "Tonight, we celebrate Liam," he began, his voice steady but brimming with emotion. "This young man didn't just save our son, he changed our lives. His courage, his kindness, and his unwavering sense of right and wrong have been an inspiration to us all. Liam, you are proof that even the smallest actions can have the greatest impact." He turned to Liam, his eyes glistening. "And now, it's time for us to take the next step. Elizabeth and I have decided that we want you to be a permanent part of our family. We'd like to formally adopt you." Gasps filled the garden, followed by a round of applause. Liam stood frozen, his heart racing. He had always felt a connection to the Whitmores, but he never imagined they would want to make it official. Tears filled his eyes as he nodded. "I'd love that," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Liam's story became a testament to the power of kindness and the transformative impact of selfless actions. From a small boy who stumbled upon a crying baby in an abandoned building, he grew into a young man with limitless potential, surrounded by a family that cherished him. Through his journey, he taught everyone around him that even in the darkest places, light can be found, and that sometimes it takes the smallest hands to hold the greatest hearts. A legacy of light. Years turned into decades, and the story of Liam's extraordinary act of kindness grew to become a legend in the city. What had begun as a simple, selfless moment blossomed into a tale of resilience, love, and the boundless potential of a compassionate heart. Liam, now a man in his early 40s, stood at the front of a large, sunlit auditorium. The room was filled with people from all walks of life. Students, families, city officials, and journalists gathered for the inauguration of a community center bearing his name, the Liam Whitmore Center for Hope. The center, built in the heart of the once neglected neighborhood where Liam had found little Jack, stood as a beacon of hope and opportunity. Its walls gleamed with fresh paint, its windows let in streams of sunlight, and its rooms bustled with life. Classrooms for education, a daycare for working parents, and programs to support families in need. It was a place where dreams could flourish, no matter where one came from. As the crowd settled, Liam stepped to the microphone. His voice, calm but resolute, carried across the room. "Today is not about me," he began, his gaze sweeping over the faces before him. "It's about all of us, about what we can accomplish when we look out for one another. Many years ago, as a boy, I stumbled upon a moment that changed my life. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment wasn't just about saving a life. It was about finding my purpose." He paused, his mind briefly drifting back to the memory of that fateful day. "That baby I found wasn't just a child in need. He became my brother, my family, and my guiding light. Little Jack, as I called him then, reminded me that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples that touch lives far beyond what we can imagine." Liam gestured toward the front row, where Jack, now a vibrant young man in his late 20s, sat with his parents, Jonathan and Elizabeth. Jack's broad smile was a reflection of the deep bond he and Liam still shared. This center, Liam continued, is dedicated to those ripples. It's for the child who feels invisible, the family that needs a helping hand, and the community that deserves a brighter future. Together, we can ensure that no one feels forgotten. The crowd erupted into applause, and Liam stepped back, his heart swelling with gratitude. The ceremony continued with performances by local children, heartfelt speeches, and a ribbon cutting that marked the official opening of the center. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight bathed the city, Liam walked through the center's halls, his steps echoing softly against the polished floors. The place was already buzzing with activity. In one room, children were reading books in a cozy corner, while in another, teenagers worked on a mural that depicted their dreams for the neighborhood. Laughter, chatter, and a sense of purpose filled the air. Liam paused at a wall near the entrance, where a large plaque bore the words, "Dedicated to the light we bring to one another." Beneath it hung a photograph of Liam as a young boy, cradling little Jack in his arms, his face a mixture of fear and determination. It was a moment frozen in time, a reminder of how far they had come. Beside him, Jack appeared, now a grown man with the same spark in his eyes that Liam had seen in him as a baby. "You've built something incredible here," Jack said, his voice filled with admiration. "Do you ever wonder how different things might have been if you hadn't found me that day?" Liam smiled, his eyes distant. "Sometimes, but life has a way of guiding us to where we're meant to be. Finding you wasn't just chance. It was a calling. And look at you now. You're the reason this center exists." Jack nodded, his expression softening. "Well, I'm glad you listened to that calling. Because you didn't just save me. You saved so many others by showing us what's possible." They stood in silence for a moment, taking in the energy of the space around them. Then, as if on cue, a small boy darted past them, laughing as he chased after a ball that had rolled into the hall. He paused when he saw Liam and Jack, his wide eyes filled with curiosity. "Is this your place?" the boy asked Liam, clutching the ball to his chest. Liam crouched to the boy's level, a warm smile on his face. "It's our place," he said. "A place for kids like you to dream, play, and grow." The boy's face lit up. "Cool. I'm gonna come here every day," he exclaimed before running off to join a group of other children. Liam stood, his smile lingering. "That's why we're here," he said to Jack, "for moments like that." Over the years, the center became a cornerstone of the community, transforming lives and bridging divides. Liam's story continued to inspire countless others, reminding them that no act of kindness was too small and that everyone had the power to make a difference. Jonathan and Elizabeth, though now older, remained pillars of support for Liam and his mission. They often visited the center, participating in events and sharing their story with those who came through its doors. For them, the center was a living tribute to the extraordinary journey their family had taken, a journey that began with a boy's simple, selfless choice. One evening, long after the center had closed for the day, Liam stood alone in his office, looking out over the city. The lights of the neighborhood glimmered like stars, each one a testament to the lives that had been touched by his work. He thought of his younger self, the boy who had wandered into an abandoned building and found not just a baby, but his purpose. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Jack, holding a stack of photos from the center's latest event. "Thought you'd want to see these," he said, handing them to Liam. As Liam flipped through the images, smiling faces, children playing, families embracing, a deep sense of fulfillment washed over him. "We've done something good here," he said quietly. Jack nodded. "And it's just the beginning." The two brothers stood side by side, gazing out at the city that had once felt forgotten, but now pulsed with life and hope. Together, they had built more than a center. They had built a legacy, and in that legacy, Liam knew the light they had kindled would burn brightly for generations to come, a ripple that reached the world. The Liam Whitmore Center for Hope had become more than a community institution. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when kindness and determination joined forces. Its impact had rippled far beyond the city where it stood, inspiring initiatives across the nation. News outlets and social media frequently shared stories of the lives it had transformed, and Liam's journey had become a global beacon of hope. But Liam wasn't one to bask in accolades. While the world celebrated his work, he remained focused on the next step, always asking himself, "What more can we do?" One chilly autumn evening, Liam sat in his office, reviewing applications for the center's scholarship program. Each story he read carried echoes of his own. A child yearning for a chance, a family struggling to make ends meet, a community in need of a champion. Though he had reviewed countless applications over the years, each one still tugged at his heart. His phone buzzed, pulling him from the stack of papers. The screen displayed a name he hadn't seen in years: Daniel Parker. Daniel had been one of Liam's childhood friends, part of the group he played hide-and-seek with on the day he found little Jack. Over time, they had lost touch as life took them down different paths. Curious and slightly nostalgic, Liam answered, "Daniel." Liam's voice was warm but cautious. "Liam," came the enthusiastic reply. "It's been too long." The two caught up quickly, exchanging stories about their lives. Daniel explained that he'd moved to a rural town hundreds of miles away, where resources were scarce and opportunities for kids were almost non-existent. "You wouldn't believe the struggles some of these kids face," Daniel said, his voice tinged with frustration. "There's nothing here for them. No centers, no programs, no hope. It's like the whole town's been forgotten." Liam felt a familiar tug in his chest, the same pull he'd felt all those years ago in the abandoned building. He leaned forward in his chair. "Daniel," he said, his tone resolute, "what if we change that?" Within weeks, Liam and his team visited Daniel's town. What they found was heartbreaking. Schools with crumbling infrastructure, a playground reduced to rusted swings, and families struggling to make ends meet. But amidst the challenges, Liam also saw potential, a community ready to rise if given the chance. He met with local leaders, educators, and families, listening to their stories and needs. Together, they envisioned a plan. A satellite center modeled after the original Liam Whitmore Center for Hope. But this time, Liam wanted to go further. "We're not just building a center," Liam announced during a town hall meeting. "We're building a partnership. This will be a place where everyone, kids, parents, teachers, feels they belong. And it will be built by this community, for this community." The crowd erupted in applause, their faces lit with a mix of hope and disbelief. Construction began shortly after, and the entire town rallied behind the project. Farmers donated land, local carpenters volunteered their skills, and artists came together to design murals that reflected the town's history and spirit. Liam was there every step of the way, often rolling up his sleeves to help lay bricks or paint walls. During one of his visits, a young girl approached him. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, her hand smudged with dirt from planting flowers outside the building. "Mr. Whitmore," she said shyly, clutching a small notebook, "can I show you something?" Liam knelt to her level and smiled. "Of course." She opened the notebook to reveal sketches of children playing, studying, and laughing together. "This is what I think it's going to look like when it's finished," she explained. "Is that okay?" Liam felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at the drawings. "It's more than okay," he said, his voice soft. "It's perfect." The girl beamed, and Liam handed her one of his business cards. "Keep drawing," he said. "One day, you might design something even bigger." Months later, the new center opened its doors, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Where there had once been despair, there was now joy. Children played on a brand new playground, parents attended job training workshops, and teens gathered in study groups. planning for futures they hadn't dared to dream of before. Word of the project spread, and soon other towns reached out, asking for guidance on building similar centers. Liam realized that what had started as a single act of kindness all those years ago had grown into something far greater than he had ever imagined. He formed the Hope Ripple Initiative, a nonprofit organization dedicated to replicating the success of the centers in underserved communities around the world. Teams of volunteers, architects, and educators joined the mission, creating a network of centers that became lifelines for countless families. One day, as Liam prepared to speak at a global conference on youth empowerment, Jack, now a co-director of the Hope Ripple Initiative, walked into his office. "Big speech today," Jack said, a teasing grin on his face. "Nervous?" Liam laughed. "Not nervous, just reflective. It's funny, isn't it, how everything led to this moment?" Jack nodded. "You always say it started with one act of kindness. But Liam, it wasn't just the act. It was you. You saw something no one else did, and you chose to act on it. That's what changed everything." Liam smiled, his mind briefly drifting back to the dusty corridors of the abandoned building, the weight of the baby in his arms, and the quiet determination that had guided him even as a child. "I guess I just followed where my heart led me," he said. As Liam walked onto the stage that evening, the crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation. He took a moment to take it all in, the applause, the lights, the sea of faces, and then, with a deep breath, he began. "This isn't my story," he said. "It's ours. It's the story of what happens when we choose hope, when we believe in the power of compassion, and when we act, not because it's easy, but because it's right." The room fell silent, every ear tuned to his words. "Each of us has the power to make a difference," Liam continued. "It starts small, a single moment, a single choice. But those moments can change lives. They can change the world." And as Liam spoke, the ripples of his message spread further, touching hearts and igniting the kind of hope that could never be forgotten. The eternal flame of kindness. Decades after Liam's remarkable journey began, his name had become synonymous with hope, courage, and compassion. The Hope Ripple Initiative had grown into a global movement, with centers in over 100 countries, each tailored to meet the unique needs of its community. Liam's once small act of kindness had become a legacy that touched millions, inspiring a generation to believe in the power of selflessness. Now in his 70s, Liam sat in the garden of his original center, a serene space where children played, parents chatted, and flowers bloomed in vibrant colors. The garden, once an empty plot of cracked concrete, had been transformed into a sanctuary of life and laughter. Liam's hair was now silver, his face lined with the marks of time, but his eyes still held the same spark that had driven him as a child. Sitting beside him was Jack, now a middle-aged man with a family of his own. Jack's young daughter, Lily, toddled nearby, her laughter echoing through the garden. She reminded Liam of Jack as a baby, full of wonder, her smile radiating pure joy. "Hard to believe it's been so many years," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Liam nodded, his gaze fixed on Lily as she bent to examine a flower. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago," he replied. "Time has a strange way of folding in on itself." Jack leaned back, his expression contemplative. "Do you ever think about how different life might have been if you hadn't found me that day?" Liam chuckled softly, a familiar question that never ceased to make him reflect. "Every now and then. But I don't linger on the what-ifs. Life has a way of putting us exactly where we need to be." He turned to Jack, his tone growing serious. "That day wasn't just about saving you. It was about finding a purpose, a reason to keep going, to give everything I had to something greater than myself." Jack smiled, his admiration for Liam evident. "You've done more than that, Liam. You've given the world a reason to hope." The celebration of Liam's 75th birthday was no ordinary event. It was held in a grand auditorium, attended by leaders, philanthropists, families, and children who had all been touched by his work. Stories were shared of lives transformed. A young woman who had escaped a cycle of poverty, a man who had become a teacher after attending one of the centers, and a family who found stability and joy after years of hardship. The stage was decorated with photos capturing the essence of the Hope Ripple initiative. Children laughing, communities building, and moments of triumph. At the center of it all was a large mural painted by artists from around the world. It depicted a young lion cradling baby Jack, surrounded by scenes of hope and renewal. When Liam took the stage, the applause was deafening. He stood for a moment, overwhelmed by the love and gratitude in the room. Then he raised his hands, signaling for quiet. "This isn't about me," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This is about all of you, the people who believed in the power of kindness, who saw that we are stronger together. My journey began with one small choice, but it grew because of countless others who chose to walk alongside me." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "If there's one thing I've learned in my life, it's this. We are all capable of extraordinary things, not because we have wealth or power, but because we have the ability to care. And when we choose to care, the ripples we create can touch lives we may never even meet." The audience sat in rapt silence as Liam continued. "I'm not here to celebrate the past. I'm here to look toward the future, to remind each of you that the work is never done. There are still children waiting for someone to believe in them, still families hoping for a brighter tomorrow. And we have the power to make that difference." That evening, Liam sat alone in his study, surrounded by photos and mementos from his incredible journey. On his desk lay a letter he had been working on for months, a letter to the next generation of leaders who would carry on his legacy. He picked up his pen and began to write. "To those who dream of a better world. If you are reading this, then you have already taken the first step. You have chosen to care, to believe in the power of kindness, and to dedicate yourself to a cause greater than yourself. My journey began with a single moment, a single choice. I didn't know where it would lead, but I followed my heart. Along the way, I learned that true change isn't about grand gestures. It's about small, consistent acts of love and compassion. You are the torchbearers now. The world will present you with challenges, but it will also give you opportunities to make a difference. When those moments come, seize them. Be brave, be kind, and never underestimate the impact of a single action. Remember, the ripples you create today will become the waves of tomorrow. And in those waves, the world will find its hope. With all my heart, Liam Whitmore." Liam placed the letter in an envelope, sealing it with a sense of fulfillment. He knew that his time on Earth was finite, but the legacy he had built would endure. It wasn't just in the buildings or programs. It was in the lives of every person who had been touched by his kindness. As he stepped outside to gaze at the stars, the sound of laughter drifted through the air. Lily and Jack were playing in the garden, their silhouettes illuminated by the soft glow of the center's lights. Liam smiled, his heart full. He had started with a single act, a single moment of courage. And from that moment, a legacy had grown, one that would continue to shine long after he was gone. The eternal flame of kindness would burn brightly in the hearts of those who came after him, lighting the way for generations to come. Passing the torch. The years had carved a quiet wisdom into Liam Whitmore, now in his 80s. His movements were slower, his voice softer, but his mind remained sharp, and his heart was as resolute as ever. The world he had helped shape was thriving. And yet, Liam knew there was still work to be done. What he had started needed to live on, not just as an idea, but as a thriving force for good, carried forward by the next generation. On a crisp spring morning, Liam gathered his closest allies, friends, and family at the original Liam Whitmore Center for Hope. The meeting room was filled with familiar faces. Jack, his brother in every way that mattered. Lily, Jack's spirited teenage daughter, who was already a fierce advocate for the centers, and leaders from around the world who had joined the Hope Ripple initiative. Liam stood at the head of the table, leaning slightly on his cane. His presence commanded respect, not from authority, but from the love and admiration he had earned over decades of unwavering service. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice warm but deliberate. "Today is not a farewell, it's a transition. The time has come for me to step back and allow new hands to carry this torch. The world doesn't need me to lead anymore. It needs all of you." There was a murmur of surprise and concern in the room. Jack leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Liam, are you sure about this? You've been the heart of this movement." Liam smiled, his gaze steady. And hearts beat strongest when they inspire others to keep moving forward. "This was never about me, Jack. It was always about the work. And the work must live beyond any one person." He turned to Lily, who sat beside her father. Her eyes, a mirror of Jack's determination, sparkled with a mix of admiration and nervous excitement. "Lily," Liam said, his tone softer now, "I've watched you grow into a force of nature. Your passion, your ideas, your belief in what we've built, they remind me of how I felt at your age. I believe you're ready to help lead this movement into its next chapter." Lily's eyes widened. "Me? Lead? I don't know if I can do what you've done." Liam chuckled gently. "Good, because you shouldn't try to be me. You should be you. Bring your own vision, your own heart, your own strength. That's how the world changes, not by copying the past, but by building on it." Over the following months, Liam worked closely with Lily and a council of trusted leaders, passing on his knowledge, sharing lessons from his triumphs and failures, and listening intently as they shared their dreams for the future of the initiative. Lily took to the role with surprising ease, her youthful energy blending seamlessly with Liam's steady wisdom. One of her first ideas was to expand the center's reach into areas facing new challenges, communities affected by climate change, refugee camps, and regions where technology could bridge educational gaps. Her plans were bold, innovative, and ambitious, and Liam couldn't have been prouder. As the baton was handed to Lily, the centers began to transform under her leadership. She introduced programs that empowered youth to become leaders in their own communities. Environmental sustainability became a core focus, with the centers adopting solar energy and creating green spaces that doubled as community gardens. Lily's vision extended to leveraging technology, providing virtual learning programs to children in remote or underserved areas. One evening, as Lily prepared for a global summit where she would present her plans for the next decade, she found Liam sitting in the garden of the original center, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, the same colors that had bathed the forgotten neighborhood on the day his journey began. Lily approached quietly, sitting beside him on the bench. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. Liam smiled. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, and how proud I am of you." Lily blushed, looking down at her hands. "I'm nervous about tomorrow. What if I mess up? What if I'm not ready? For the light we carry within, and the ripples we create in the world." Lily closed her eyes and let the peace of the moment wash over her. She thought of Liam, of his unwavering belief in people, and of the countless lives he had touched. She smiled, knowing that his story would continue, not in the words written about him, but in the actions of those who chose to follow his example. The lesson of Liam Whitmore's life was clear. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change the world. It reminded everyone who heard his story that within each of us lies the light to make a difference. And as Lily walked through the garden, surrounded by laughter and life, she carried that light forward, ensuring that Liam's legacy would shine for generations to come. For the ripples he started were now waves, reaching farther and touching more hearts than he could have ever dreamed. A testament to the truth that kindness, when shared, has no end. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.